Story: Millionaire's mistress mocks his pregnant wife while wearing stolen diamonds. Unaware she's still a detective. Hello, everyone. Sabrina Vale thinks the diamond necklace around her throat proves she has replaced Derek's pregnant wife. Natalie recognizes the setting from an evidence photograph before Sabrina finishes mocking her. Stay with this story to the end and tell me, would you confront someone on suspicion or wait until the evidence could stand on its own? The first thing Natalie Whitmore noticed about her husband's mistress wasn't the dress, the smile, or the way she touched Derek's arm. It was the necklace, and Natalie had seen it before in an evidence photograph. The auctioneer's hammer cracked through the Manhattan ballroom. Once. Sharp. Final. Applause followed beneath crystal chandeliers as another six-figure painting disappeared into private ownership. Natalie stood near a glass display case, 7 months pregnant, one hand resting beneath the curve of her belly. Her champagne blonde hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and a simple ivory maternity gown made her look almost delicate beneath the cold museum lights. Almost. Across the room, Derek Callahan laughed with investors beside the auction platform. Tall, dark-haired, perfect tuxedo, millionaire owner of Callahan and Pierce. Her husband, Sabrina Vale, stood beside him. His mistress, Natalie, had known about Sabrina for 6 weeks. Tonight was not about proving that betrayal. Then Sabrina noticed her. She crossed the marble floor slowly, heels clicking like a countdown. Natalie. Sabrina. Sabrina's hazel eyes moved deliberately toward Natalie's stomach. 7 months pregnant, and you still followed Derek to parties? Natalie's expression remained calm. I was invited. Of course. Sabrina smiled. Technically. She moved closer, lowering her voice. You know you don't have to keep doing this. Doing what? Pretending. Natalie waited. People underestimated silence because they mistook it for emptiness. Detectives knew better. Silence made careless people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people talked. Sabrina touched the diamond necklace around her throat. Derek has a different life now. Natalie's eyes followed her fingers. 3 large diamonds formed an unusual crescent around a smaller blue stone. Her heartbeat changed, not because Derek might have bought it, because 6 months earlier Natalie had studied photographs of that exact pattern after a burglary on the Upper East Side. A private collection had been hid overnight. Jewelry, watches, 2 small paintings. Among the missing pieces was a custom necklace with 3 crescent-set diamonds surrounding a blue sapphire. Natalie remembered the image because the setting was unusual. Sabrina mistook her stare for jealousy. Beautiful, isn't it? She lifted the necklace slightly. He bought me something too. Natalie looked at her face now. Did he? Does that hurt? It did. But not for the reason Sabrina wanted. Visual recognition was not identification. Similar jewelry existed. Natalie needed provenance. Engravings. Records. Something independent. She would not touch it. She would not accuse her. No, Natalie said. Just trying to remember where I've seen it. For the first time, Sabrina's smile hesitated. You haven't. Maybe. It's private. Interesting word. Natalie's daughter kicked beneath her ribs. She placed a hand over the movement. Sabrina laughed softly. You should focus on that. My daughter. Your new life. Sabrina glanced toward Derek. Because this one is moving on without you. Derek looked across the ballroom at them. His expression tightened. Sabrina noticed and smiled again. See? Natalie followed her gaze. I see more than you think. Sabrina rolled her eyes and walked back toward Derek. Natalie waited until she disappeared into the crowd. Then she moved toward a quiet corridor beside the coat room. She opened her cream clutch. Beneath a folded auction program sat an encrypted department-issued phone Derek assumed she rarely carried while pregnant. Natalie typed a short message to Marcus Reed. Possible visual match. Crescent diamond necklace, blue center stone. Currently worn by Sabrina Vale. Do not act on visual ID alone. Verify case inventory. She sent it. 3 seconds later, the screen showed. Received. We verify independently. Do not approach item. Natalie locked the phone. The auctioneer's hammer cracked again inside the ballroom. Then Derek's voice came from behind her. Natalie. She turned. Her husband stood at the end of the corridor, staring at the clutch in her hand. Who are you texting? Natalie slipped the phone inside and closed it. Someone who listens. Derek frowned. Behind him, Sabrina touched the necklace that might have been stolen 6 months earlier and smiled as if she were wearing proof that she had won. She had no idea she might actually be wearing evidence. For years earlier, Derek Callahan had loved telling people that Natalie Whitmore noticed everything. Back then, he meant it as a compliment. They met at a Manhattan gallery after a sculpture disappeared from a private collection. Natalie was 26, blonde, sharp-eyed, and already a detective. Derek was an ambitious auction specialist with one borrowed office, 2 employees, and enough confidence to fill a building he did not yet own. He was not a suspect. He was a witness who remembered an invoice number nobody else had bothered to write down. "You always look at people like that?" he asked after their interview. "Like what?" "Like you're waiting for me to lie." Natalie closed her notebook. "Are you planning to?" Derek smiled. "Not anymore." 6 months later, they were dating. 2 years later, married. Natalie loved the man who once cooked pasta at midnight after her shifts and waited awake when cases ran late. Derek loved the woman who could enter a room, say almost nothing, and remember which hand someone used to reach for a glass. Then Callahan and Pierce grew. Somewhere between his first million and his first penthouse, admiration became inconvenience. "Do you have to analyze everybody?" he asked one night. "Occupational hazard. We're at dinner, Natalie. Not a crime scene." Later, he started introducing her differently. "Not Detective Whitmore. Just my wife, Natalie." Then she became pregnant. The first ultrasound changed her in ways she hadn't expected. Natalie requested removal from field-heavy assignments as her pregnancy progressed. Derek translated that into something else. "She's basically retired for now," he told people. Natalie corrected him twice, then stopped. She was not retired. She was still an active detective, working under restrictions appropriate to her pregnancy. And months earlier, her unit had begun tracking a pattern that had nothing to do with Derek. Luxury homes were being burglarized with unusual precision. Jewelry disappeared. Watches, small artworks, pieces distinctive enough to be difficult to sell openly. Then, months later, similar items resurfaced with cleaner histories and new paperwork. Someone was laundering stolen luxury goods back into legitimate markets. Natalie had already stepped away from physical surveillance and tactical work as her pregnancy progressed. When one stolen object appeared uncomfortably close to her husband's business, Captain Diane Mercer removed her from the case entirely. Derek knew Natalie still had a badge. What he did not understand was that pregnancy had not ended her career, or her obligation to report something suspicious if it happened naturally in front of her. A bracelet listed in a preliminary Callahan and Pierce catalog resembled a piece reported missing from a Connecticut collection. Resemblance wasn't proof. The listing was quietly flagged. Marcus began checking provenance independently. Natalie reported the potential conflict immediately. Captain Mercer looked at her across a conference table. "From now on, you do not access your husband's records." "Understood. No passwords. No private office. No asking him questions on our behalf." "Understood." Mercer leaned forward. "If something is voluntarily said in your presence, report it. Do not turn a social encounter into an interview. Then step back." Natalie nodded. "And if the evidence leads away from Derek? Then we follow it away. And if it doesn't?" Mercer held her gaze. "Then we follow it where it goes." Natalie went home that evening carrying a daughter beneath her heart and a question she refused to answer without evidence. Derek kissed her forehead while checking his phone. Sabrina Vale's name flashed briefly across the screen before he turned it face down. The wife noticed that. The detective noticed something else. Derek had stopped asking about her work months ago. He believed pregnancy had made her professionally harmless. Sabrina apparently believed the same thing. And that was why, weeks later, a woman wearing a possibly stolen necklace would feel perfectly comfortable mocking Natalie to her face. Derek had simply grown rich enough to underestimate the woman he married. The necklace was not enough. Natalie knew that before Marcus Reed replied the next morning. Visual characteristics consistent. No positive identification. Keep distance. She read the message twice, then deleted the notification from her screen. A detective could recognize a pattern. A court required more. Serial numbers. Engravings. Provenance. Records that survived questions from defense attorneys. So Natalie did exactly what Captain Mercer had ordered. Nothing. At least, nothing that crossed the line. She did not touch Sabrina's necklace. She did not photograph it secretly. She did not search Derek's office or open his auction records. She went to breakfast with her husband and listened while he spent 20 minutes answering emails without looking at her. "Coffee?" Derek asked eventually. Natalie glanced at her stomach. Still pregnant. Right. He pushed the decaf toward her. Once, he had known every restriction before she did. Now he barely remembered which appointments he had missed. His phone vibrated. Sabrina. Derek turned it face down. Natalie watched him do it. The wife felt the familiar ache. The detective let the detail pass. An affair was not evidence of theft. 3 days later, Sabrina gave Natalie something more useful than the necklace. She gave her arrogance. They were attending a private collector's reception at Callahan and Pierce when Sabrina appeared beside Natalie carrying champagne. Still watching my necklace? She asked. Natalie looked at the diamonds. It's unusual. Sabrina touched the crescent setting. That's why I like it. Some pieces don't need paperwork when you know the right people. Natalie said nothing. Sabrina kept going, pleased to sound important. Derek has a private collection that never touches the public catalog. Kessler handles certain acquisitions. People inside this world don't need permission for everything. Natalie let the silence sit between them. She had not asked for a supplier, a private collection, or a paperwork shortcut. Sabrina had offered all three because she believed Derek's pregnant wife was outside the circle. Natalie excused herself 10 minutes later, entered an empty powder room, and sent Marcus the exact conversation. No conclusions. No accusation. Marcus replied 2 hours later. Alias appears in 2 provenance files already under review. We're working it independently. By evening, investigators had found something Natalie had never seen. The same supplier name attached to documentation for multiple luxury pieces that had resurfaced after reported thefts. Still not proof that Derek knew. Still not proof Sabrina knew. But the circle was tightening. That night, Natalie stood in their bedroom removing her earrings when Derek entered. Sabrina says you interrogated her. Natalie met his reflection in the mirror. I asked who designed her necklace. Why? It was interesting. Derek loosened his tie. Stay out of auction business. The words came too quickly. Natalie turned. I thought it was just jewelry. Silence. Derek looked at her for 1 beat too long. Then his phone rang. He checked the screen and walked toward the hallway before answering. Natalie heard only 6 words before the bedroom door closed. Kessler, I said not tonight. Her hand stopped against the dresser. Not because the name surprised her. Because Derek had just connected himself to it. Natalie looked down at her wedding ring. The wife wanted to follow him through that door. The detective knew better. She picked up her department phone instead and typed 1 sentence to Marcus. Derek just answered a call and addressed the caller as Kessler. I did not hear anything further. Then she put the phone away. Across the hallway, Derek lowered his voice behind a closed door. He still believed the most dangerous thing Natalie could discover was his mistress. He had no idea Sabrina had just given investigators a name, and he had confirmed he knew exactly who it belonged to. You're not a detective tonight. Derek said it quietly, but Natalie heard the warning beneath every word. The private auction preview had entered its busiest hour. Crystal glasses chimed beneath the chandeliers. A jazz trio played near the terrace while collectors moved between illuminated display cases, studying diamonds and paintings as if money could make beauty obedient. Natalie stood beside Derek near the entrance to the main gallery, 7 months pregnant, her champagne blonde hair falling over the shoulders of an ivory gown. Across the room, Sabrina Vale watched them over the rim of a champagne glass. What am I tonight? Natalie asked. Derek adjusted his cuff link. My wife. I'm both. Not here. His eyes moved towards Sabrina before returning to Natalie. Whatever you're doing with her, stop. Natalie kept her voice soft. What do you think I'm doing? Asking questions. Watching people. Turning everything into an investigation. She told me about Kessler. Derek's face changed. Barely. But Natalie saw it. Sabrina talks too much. You answered a call from Kessler 3 nights ago. And nothing. Natalie held his gaze. I'm just listening. Derek stepped closer. Then listen to me. This is my business. You're my wife tonight. Not a detective. The sentence landed harder than Natalie expected. Once, Derek had loved that part of her. Now he spoke about her badge like an embarrassing habit she should leave in the car. Natalie's daughter shifted beneath her ribs. She rested 1 hand over the movement. Understood, she said. Derek seemed relieved. He kissed her cheek with the tenderness of a man performing marriage for a room full of witnesses, then walked toward 2 waiting investors. That was painful. Sabrina's voice came from behind Natalie. Click, click. Her heels stopped beside her. The crescent diamond necklace still rested against her throat. Natalie glanced at it once. Were you listening? Everyone was. Sabrina smiled. See? Even your husband knows when you're irrelevant. Natalie turned toward her. Does that make you feel safer? Sabrina's smile tightened. From you. She laughed. Please. Natalie said nothing. Silence did what it always did. Sabrina filled it. Derek needs someone who understands this world. Private buyers. Discreet acquisitions. People who don't ask stupid questions about paperwork. Like Kessler. Sabrina's fingers froze around her champagne stem. You really can't help yourself. Occupational habit. Former occupational habit. Natalie almost corrected her. Almost. Then Derek approached from the opposite side with his operations director. He didn't notice Natalie and Sabrina standing partly behind the display partition. Did Kessler deliver the blue case? Derek asked. The director lowered his voice. This afternoon. Where? Secured downstairs. Good. Lot 17 stays off the floor until I approve it. Natalie's heartbeat sharpened. Blue case. Lot 17. 2 new details. Sabrina suddenly stepped forward. Derek. He stopped. His eyes found Natalie behind her. Silence. How long have you been standing there? He asked. Natalie looked at him. Long enough to know there's a blue case. Anger flashed across Derek's face. Natalie. Relax. I'm just your wife tonight, remember? Sabrina laughed, but Derek didn't. Natalie excused herself and walked toward the restroom corridor at an unhurried pace. No chase. No confrontation. No attempt to find the basement. Inside the empty lounge, she removed the encrypted department phone from her clutch and typed only what she had personally heard. Derek asked whether Kessler delivered a blue case. Staff confirmed delivery this afternoon, secured downstairs. Derek said Lot 17 stays off floor, pending his approval. Marcus replied less than a minute later. Received. Do not pursue. We'll verify independently. Natalie locked the screen. Outside, the auctioneer's hammer struck once. Then twice. She stared at herself in the mirror. Derek thought telling her she wasn't a detective tonight could make the detective disappear. But training did not vanish because a husband stopped respecting it. And somewhere beneath the glittering auction floor, a blue case had just given investigators something far more useful than Sabrina's arrogance. A place to start looking. The first thing Sabrina noticed was that Lot 17 had been removed from the digital catalog. She refreshed the tablet twice, then marched into the backstage corridor. Derek. You pulled 17. Derek turned from his operations director. Lower your voice. You said the provenance was clean. I said lower your voice. Beyond the velvet partition, the auction continued. A paddle rose. The hammer fell. Sold. Natalie stood near the ballroom entrance, watching without appearing to watch. Panic changed people physically. Shoulders rose, breathing shortened, eyes searched exits. Derek was doing all 3. He faced his operations director. Keep Lot 17 in the secondary vault. Do not release it to Kessler or any buyer tonight. The man hesitated. Compliance already froze movement after counsel's preservation notice. We're not touching it. Derek's jaw tightened. Then nobody goes near that room without me. Natalie heard every word. She did not approach. Did not ask what Lot 17 contained. Did not follow anyone toward the lower level. She simply opened her clutch beneath the edge of a cocktail table and typed into the encrypted phone. Derek instructed staff to keep Lot 17 in a secondary vault and restrict access. Staff stated compliance had already frozen movement under a preservation notice. Marcus replied, Received. Stay where you are. Natalie locked the screen. Why do you keep looking at the exits? Sabrina had appeared beside her again. Natalie glanced over. The crescent necklace caught the chandelier light. Do I? Every few minutes. Occupational habit. Sabrina smiled. You don't have an occupation anymore. Natalie looked at her. That's what Derek tells people. Something in her tone erased Sabrina's smile. What does that mean? Exactly what I said. You're trying to scare me. No. Natalie rested one hand beneath her belly. You seem capable of doing that yourself. Sabrina stepped closer. Whatever game you're playing, stop. I'm standing at an auction. You keep asking about Kessler. You keep disappearing. And now things are missing. Natalie's eyes narrowed. Are you accusing me of taking Lot 17? Sabrina hesitated. Wrong direction. Wrong accusation. I'm saying this started when you showed up. I'm Derek's wife. I was invited. Not for much longer. There it was again. Personal cruelty used as armor. Natalie felt it. She simply refused to let it choose her next move. Then I suppose you have nothing to worry about. Behind them, Derek's voice rose. Lock the private inventory room. Several guests turned. His operations director lowered his voice urgently, but Derek cut him off. Nobody moves anything else without me. Natalie's phone vibrated once. She waited until Sabrina looked toward Derek before checking it. Read, do not approach lower level. Court authorization covers identified inventory areas. Team moving. Natalie put the phone away. Marcus's team had built its own evidentiary trail through storage records, provenance documents, and existing investigative work. Her role ended with reporting what happened in front of her. Whatever came next belonged to the assigned investigators. Suddenly, the music stopped. Not dramatically. One musician lowered his instrument, then another, as a member of auction management approached the stage and whispered to the auctioneer. The auctioneer's expression changed. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be taking a brief intermission. Murmurs spread across the room. Derek turned toward the private corridor. Two unfamiliar men in dark suits had appeared near the restricted entrance. Behind them stood Marcus Reed. He did not look at Natalie. He didn't need to. Sabrina's fingers rose instinctively toward the necklace around her throat. Derek went completely still. Who are they? She whispered. Natalie watched Marcus present credentials to auction security. Maybe you should ask Derek. Sabrina looked at her. Fear replaced contempt. You know them. Natalie said nothing. Then heels clicked from the main entrance. Captain Diane Mercer walked into the ballroom, calm beneath 100 confused faces. Derek stepped forward. This is a private event. Mercer met his eyes. Not all of it anymore. And for the first time that evening, Sabrina stopped looking at Natalie like a discarded pregnant wife and started wondering exactly who she had been mocking. Shortly after 8 that evening, the applause thinned into a nervous hush. Auction security quietly closed access to the restricted inventory corridor while Mercer's team took position beside them, credentials visible and voices controlled. Derek Callahan stepped closer. Who authorized this? Mercer held his gaze. Mr. Callahan, investigators are executing a court-authorized search involving specific inventory and records connected to an ongoing investigation. This is private property. We're aware. You're disrupting an auction. Then I suggest you let your guests enjoy the intermission. Derek's face tightened. I want my attorney. You're free to call counsel. That answer unsettled him more than an argument would have. Sabrina stood several feet away, fingers pressed against the crescent necklace at her throat. Natalie remained beside the display cases, one hand beneath her pregnant belly. She did not approach Mercer. She did not speak to Marcus. She did exactly what she had been instructed to do. Nothing. Derek turned toward her. Natalie. She met his eyes. Did you know about this? Before she could answer, Sabrina stepped between them. Of course she did. Derek looked at her. What? She's been asking questions all night. About Kessler. About the blue case. About Lot 17. Sabrina pointed toward Natalie. And she keeps disappearing with that clutch. The room seemed to shrink. Derek stared at his wife. What's in the bag? Natalie said nothing. Natalie. His voice hardened. Give it to me. No, one word. Calm. Final. Derek took a step toward her. Marcus immediately moved closer, not touching him. Sir, stay where you are. Derek looked at Marcus, then at Natalie. Who the hell are you? Detective Marcus Reed. Sabrina went pale. Derek's eyes snapped back to his wife. Mercer exhaled softly, as if recognizing that the secret had reached its natural end. Detective Whitmore, she said, you're done here. Marcus has it. Silence. Sabrina's hand dropped from her necklace. Detective Whitmore. Natalie looked at her. No smile. No satisfaction. Derek seemed unable to process the words. I know she's a detective. Mercer held his gaze. Then you should know she remains an active one. Derek's face changed. You told me you were stepping back because of the baby. Natalie answered quietly. I stepped back from field work. And when your business touched the case, I was removed from that case. Neither thing ended my career. Sabrina stared at Natalie as fragments of the evening rearranged themselves in her mind. The questions, the exits, the second phone, the silence. You were investigating us? She whispered. No, Natalie's voice remained steady. The investigation started with stolen property. Derek shook his head. And somehow it magically ended up here. It didn't magically do anything. Natalie looked at him. And this time the hurt was visible. Records led to suppliers. Suppliers led to inventory. Inventory led to Callahan and Pierce. So I was the target. Not at the beginning. That landed harder. Mercer turned toward the restricted corridor as an investigator approached and quietly handed her a preliminary inventory sheet. She read it without comment. Sabrina suddenly reached for the clasp of her necklace. Fine. Take this stupid thing. Marcus raised a hand. Don't remove or alter anything right now, ma'am. We'll explain the appropriate next steps. Sabrina froze. Then she looked at Natalie. You knew? Natalie's eyes settled on the diamonds. I recognized a possibility. And you let me wear it all night? Recognition isn't proof. Sabrina's lips parted. Natalie continued. That's the difference between suspicion and evidence. Derek stared at his wife as if seeing the woman he married 4 years earlier for the first time. Not retired. Not irrelevant. Not merely pregnant. A detective who had refused to break the rules even when the evidence moved toward her own home. The auctioneer's hammer sat untouched beneath the stage lights. Tonight, it would not decide what belonged to whom. Neither would Derek's money. And neither would Natalie's broken heart. You investigated your own husband? Derek's voice was low now. The auction floor had been cleared of most guests, leaving behind half-full champagne glasses, abandoned bidding paddles, and the uncomfortable silence of people who had realized the evening was no longer entertainment. Natalie stood beneath the cold gallery lights, 7 months pregnant, while investigators worked beyond the restricted corridor. No, she said. I investigated stolen property. Your name arrived later. Derek stared at her. That's supposed to make this better? It's supposed to make it accurate. Sabrina stood several feet away, her confidence gone. The crescent necklace still rested against her throat. And me? She demanded. Were you investigating me too? Natalie looked at her. You arrived wearing something that resembled evidence. Sabrina's hand immediately rose toward the clasp. Marcus Reed stepped forward. Please don't remove it yet, Ms. Vale. We'll explain what we need and proceed appropriately. Sabrina dropped her hand. Derek gave it to me. Derek turned sharply. Don't. You did. I said don't. Natalie watched them without satisfaction. Months earlier, seeing them turn against each other might have felt like justice. Tonight it only looked small. Mercer approached from the corridor. The search is continuing. Nobody here is being asked to draw conclusions tonight. Derek laughed bitterly. That's convenient. It's procedure. You walk into my business during an auction and call it procedure? A judge authorized a search based on evidence developed independently of your wife. Mercer's tone never changed. What happens after that depends on what the evidence actually supports. Derek looked back at Natalie. Independently. I reported what I lawfully observed, Natalie said. Marcus and the team verified it. I never searched your office. I never opened your records. I never touched your inventory. But you suspected me. Her voice softened. I kept hoping I was wrong. That stopped him. For one brief second, the millionaire disappeared. Natalie saw the man who used to wait outside her precinct with takeout because she had forgotten dinner. Was our marriage ever real? He asked. Sabrina looked away. Natalie felt her daughter move beneath her ribs. Real enough that I wanted the evidence to lead anywhere but you. Derek swallowed. Then why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That stolen property was appearing near your business? Yes. Because I'm a detective. You're my wife. I was both. The past tense landed between them. Derek heard it. Natalie, the investigation didn't break our marriage. She glanced toward Sabrina. That happened before tonight. Sabrina stiffened. Derek lowered his voice. We can talk about that at home. Natalie almost smiled. Home. The word sounded strange now. You brought her here wearing jewelry you gave her while your pregnant wife stood 10 feet away. This isn't about Sabrina. Exactly. Natalie stepped closer. That's what you still don't understand. I never used my badge to investigate your affair. I never asked Marcus to follow you. I never turned heartbreak into probable cause. Derek had no answer. You betrayed our marriage, she continued. And separately, evidence moved toward your business. Those are two different truths. I refuse to corrupt one because of the other. Sabrina's eyes filled with panic. I didn't know that necklace was stolen. Natalie looked at her. Then the investigation will determine what you knew. You don't believe me. What I believe personally isn't the standard. Silence. Sabrina had mocked Natalie for hours because she thought power meant knowing Derek better than his wife. Now she was learning that real power could look like refusing to decide guilt before evidence did. Derek reached toward Natalie's hand. She stepped back. Don't. He froze. Natalie slowly removed her wedding ring. She held it for a moment, then closed her fingers around it rather than giving it to him. I'm not using my badge to punish you for loving someone else, she said. And I'm not using this ring to protect you from what comes next. Captain Mercer waited near the exit. Natalie turned toward her. Behind them, investigators continued their work. Natalie walked toward the doors. Natalie, Derek called. She stopped but didn't turn. Where are you going? Her hands settled over their unborn daughter. Somewhere I don't have to pretend I didn't see what was right in front of me. Then she walked out, carrying the badge Derek had underestimated, the child he had forgotten to ask about, and the wedding ring she no longer needed him to define. For months later, Natalie Whitmore stood in front of an empty hook. It was inside the bedroom closet of her new apartment, between two winter coats and a row of maternity dresses she no longer needed. Once, that hook had held the garment bag containing her wedding dress. Now it held nothing. Natalie stared at it while morning light spread across the floor. Behind her, Lucy Whitmore made a tiny sound from the bassinet. Natalie turned immediately. I know, she whispered. The closet is boring. Lucy blinked up at her, blue eyes unfocused, one small fist pressed beside her cheek. Natalie smiled and lifted her daughter carefully into her arms. For months had changed almost everything. She had given birth to Lucy several weeks after the auction. Derek had been notified. He had asked to see his daughter, and Natalie had refused to turn their broken marriage into a weapon against their child. Parenting arrangements were being handled through attorneys, separately from everything else. Separately. That word had become important. The investigation had continued without Natalie while she was on maternity leave. Marcus and Captain Mercer never asked her to participate in matters involving Derek unless procedure required it. Investigators authenticated recovered property, reconstructed provenance records, interviewed witnesses, and traced transactions connected to Kessler and several luxury goods transfers. Some stolen pieces had been recovered. Others remained disputed while insurers and owners worked through claims. Derek faced criminal and civil proceedings connected to evidence investigators said required judicial review. Sabrina was also under investigation regarding the provenance of jewelry and her role in certain acquisitions. None of that made either of them automatically guilty. Natalie understood that better than anyone. Evidence had to survive scrutiny. Allegations had to be proved. Courts, not betrayed wives, delivered verdicts. She had stopped reading articles about Derek after the second week. Lucy shifted against her chest. You're going to make everything complicated, aren't you? Natalie murmured. The baby yawned. Natalie laughed softly. On the dresser sat Lucy's photograph beside a cream envelope forwarded by Captain Mercer. Natalie opened it with one hand while rocking her daughter with the other. Inside was a copy of a thank you note from the owner of one recovered piece. The woman wrote that the jewelry had belonged to her mother and had been worn at her wedding nearly 50 years earlier. She did not write about market value. She wrote about memory. Natalie read the note twice. That was the part headlines never understood. Stolen property was not only diamonds, insurance claims, and auction estimates. Sometimes it was a daughter getting back the last object that still carried her mother's touch. Natalie folded the note carefully and placed it beside Lucy's photograph. Her maternity leave would end soon. Captain Mercer had already written, "Your desk is still yours when you're ready." Marcus added, "And your office plant is filing a complaint against me." Natalie smiled. Her badge was in the top drawer, waiting for the day she chose to wear it again. Her wedding ring was sealed in an envelope for her attorney with the rest of the separation documents. She did not need either object in her hand to know who she was. Lucy yawned against her shoulder. Some things should be returned, Natalie whispered. Some things should be released. Outside, Manhattan moved through a cold morning. Delivery trucks, subway brakes, doors opening to ordinary lives. The recovered jewelry in Captain Mercer's note had gone back to a family that remembered a wedding, a mother, and nearly 50 years of history, not an auction estimate. Natalie could not return her own marriage to what it had once been. She no longer wanted to. Lucy curled one hand into the fabric of her sweater. Natalie kissed the top of her head, placed the thank you note beside the baby's photograph, and left the unopened news alerts face down on the dresser. Some chapters deserved evidence. Some deserved forgiveness. and some simply deserved an ending. Natalie carried her daughter toward the kitchen and began the morning.